Hey guys, it's Lauren Yates from Rave here, and today we're chatting over Skype with the owner and creator of the Mamma Mia Women's Network, Mia Freedman. Hi Mia, how are you going today?
Hello, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Welcome to Rave It Up. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, you recently went to the Macleay College Open Day, and I thought this is the perfect time to get you on the show because I used to go to Macleay.
Did you? It's fantastic. We run our intern program. They're one of our intern program partners, and yeah, they do a terrific program down there. Really, very practical. All the training that they offer. So yeah, and of course the head of journalism there is Monica Rattard, who's a phenomenal journalist. So I do anything that she asks me.
That's so nice. It's so good that all the students could just ask you anything they wanted to ask you.
Yeah, totally.
That's great. I'm sorry I wasn't there, but I was advertising it for you guys. Now, since this is your first time on the show, we'd love to get to know you a little bit better, and I think we should start from the beginning because that only makes sense too, right?
For sure.
We'd all love to know, before Mamma Mia was, I guess, born, were there any other careers that you personally wanted to pursue with your life, or was writing always in the blood?
It was always. I mean, I loved writing, but I guess and when I was younger, the only form of women's media was women's magazines. So in terms of journalism that spoke to me, I didn't really, I mean, I read newspapers and I listened to the radio and I watched television, of course, but that was all sort of very much broadcasting, and they were very much the world through a male lens. Male hosts on radio shows, and there still are. Commercial radio is dominated by men, and so is obviously television and newspapers. So women's magazines were sort of, I was just instinctively drawn to them. And so I guess the through line through my career has been women's media more than necessarily print or, a particular type of media. I once would have said that I'm a writer first and foremost, and probably I would still say that. But, I've become a podcast host in the last couple of years, and that's something I absolutely am passionate about. I've done some TV as well, but that's absolutely not something that interests me. But podcasting and writing are still my true passions.
That's great. It's good with this industry. You can do a little bit of everything. So you can try out the podcasting and still be writing.
Yeah, not only can you, but you should. Particularly if you want a career in media, you have to be multi-skilled. We're all doing everything. You need to be able to understand how to write, how to work at the back end of a content management system. You need to know about SEO. You need to know about video. So the more of those skills you have, if you want to get into the media, the better.
Yeah. And I did hear, was it back in the day you also worked as a waitress? Was that just to, make meats end?
Oh, yeah. Gosh,
ends meet, I mean.
I've always grown up with a very, very strong work ethic. So the minute that I could legally get a job, which was, I think, 14 years and 9 months was the day that you could used to be the first day that you could be legal and not considered child labour anymore. So my first job was a checkout chick at Woolies, and then I worked as a sales assistant at clothes stores, and then I waitressed. I've worked as a promotional girl, like handing out flyers at motor shows and boat shows. All of those kinds of things that everybody does to, make a buck while you're either at school or at uni. Or in my case, I interned for quite a long time at Clio magazine, and obviously that didn't pay any money for months and months. So I had to work a few other jobs on the side.
But it was experience. That's what matters.
That's crucial. And without that, I absolutely would never have got into the industry because I had no experience. I mean, that's the irony, is that you can't get a job without experience, and you can't get experience without a job unless you intern. And that's how you get experience. So I can't recommend interning highly enough. It's also a really good way to see if the career that looks great from the outside, or the job that looks great from the outside, is actually something that you want to do when you get inside. And there's no other way to do that than just giving it a bit of a go and seeing what it's like.
Yeah, and for the bosses, it kind of shows who's the most dedicated and, who's willing to work for free for you.
Yeah, we employ a lot of interns, not even so much the dedication, but firstly because all bosses hate recruitment. All bosses hate, putting an ad and interviewing people and sifting through applications. So if there's someone in your immediate vicinity who you already know and who's proven themselves to you in terms of their commitment and turning up on time and, being a decent person and, you've seen the quality of their work, even if it's sort of menial work, then you're much more likely to give them a go. I mean, that's how we operate time and again. So there are so many people that I work with now at Mamma Mia who started as interns.
That's good. They're still with you. It's become like a family.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, Mamma Mia started off just as a blog in 2007, something you used to just do and work on at home, which really reminds me of how Rave started actually as well. So how long was it a blog for before you started thinking, wow, I can't do this by myself, I should get some people in to help me?
Yeah, probably about 18 months. I was doing everything myself because it wasn't a business, so I couldn't afford to hire anyone. And I also didn't quite know what I was doing. I wanted, I'd been in senior management for such a long time that part of the reason that I walked away from that lovely executive salary into the very uncertain, broke world of starting your own business is that I wanted to be hands-on again. I wanted to be the one in the driver's seat who was in control of what I was producing. So I did that for 18 months and then I was really burning out and I couldn't grow because I didn't have the skills or the bandwidth just in my own time to take us to the next level. So that's when my husband came on board. It wasn't anyone that I had to pay, luckily. He worked for the same price as me, which was nothing, and still does. But he really had a vision for Mamma Mia as a business and as a company rather than a passion project, which, I was all passion. And he had some of that more practical knowledge and business skills, and he took over that side of it, and that's when we started to grow. That's when we moved from a blog to a women's website, and that was really crucial. So that was probably around 2009.
Wow, very helpful. And when you did get writers on board, did you find it hard getting other people to write for you? Because you obviously want to keep, that high level, high standard for yourself.
Yeah, and it's not that other people didn't have a high standard. I mean, I thought that maybe people, because there were bloggers that I followed and I went to their blogs to hear their voice. And so I was very anxious that if there were other people on the site that maybe I'd lose my audience. But of course, I also at the same time wanted Mamma Mia to be a platform for lots of women's voices, not just mine, because I've got one very specific, bog standard experience of white, suburban, Jewish, middle-class girl. And there were a million other female experiences that I wanted to be able to help reach a bigger audience. So that's when we started doing guest posts. That's when we started having other people. And I was much happier then, not just because I didn't have to write everything myself, but because there was more diversity. Diversity is something that I've always fought for in my whole career in terms of how women are portrayed. But it's not just the images of women out there that is what diversity is about. It's also the voices, whose voices get to get out there. And I was in the position where I built this platform. I had this influence and I had this audience, and I wanted to pull other women up with me, alongside me. And that's kind of always how I've lived my life. And Mamma Mia's core purpose is to make the world a better place for women and girls. And part of the way that we do that is by amplifying the voices of lots of different women.
And it brings all different audiences in for you as well.
Yeah, it does, which is obviously a good thing. But it also it's also just more interesting. Like I want to learn about the experiences of women whose lives are very different to mine, or whose opinions are very different to mine. And I think that it's been great to be able to do that with Mamma Mia.
I always enjoy that too, reading all different opinions and how people live. It's really interesting. So good job.
Thanks.
So the Mamma Mia Women's Network has now become Australia's largest women's media company, which is incredible, and reaches about 4 million women per month with offices in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and New York. How does that make you feel? Do you have to pinch yourself sometimes? Like, you've grown exponentially.
Yeah, it makes me feel nervous a lot of the time because that's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. There's a lot of wages that need to be paid. There's a lot of people that need computers and annual leave and tea bags to be bought for the kitchen. All of those kinds of things. So as you grow, it's funny when people come into the office, if they run their own business, they'll look around and go, oh my God, you've got so many people, because they know what it means to employ lots of people. But people who've never run their own business will walk in and go, oh my God, it's so big, amazing. And it's like, yeah, it's like more people, more problems in some ways. But it's fantastic. I'm very proud in the moments that I'm just don't sort of have my head down and my bum up and working like a demon.
Well, it's good that you're still proud and take those moments to appreciate it. So you've obviously done a lot of interviews in your time as well. What has been your favourite interview? It's probably hard to answer.
Yeah, so we recently clocked over the 100 mark 100 episode mark on my No Filter podcast, which is where I do a sort of a quite intimate one-on-one interview. Oh, there've been so many. I always just remember the most recent ones. So there's one out today or this week with a woman called Amanda Goff, who goes by the name Samantha X, and she's Australia's highest paid escort. And that was just an amazing interview, so interesting. Samuel Johnson, who of course is in the news after the loss of his beautiful sister Connie, was someone that I've wanted to interview for a long time, and I interviewed him about 2 or 3 months ago. And he's such an amazing person. We just hit it off and have become such close friends since then. It's one of the most interesting interviews that I've ever done, just where it went and how his mind works. I found that fascinating. And I wanted to sort of talk to him about more than just Connie, like explore the side of him that, I mean, he's done an incredible work with Love Your Sister and what he's done for raising awareness about breast cancer with the Love Your Sister Foundation and his unicycle ride around Australia. But I just found, he's a fascinating guy, absolutely fascinating. And another one that I did, these are 3 very different interviews, but I interviewed an author called David Gillespie, who wrote a book about sugar, but his most recent book is about psychopaths and about not psychopaths like killers, but there are a lot of psychopaths that just walk among us that are our co-workers and our bosses and our partners and sometimes even our parents or our grandparents. And he's written a book about this idea of these toxic people, particularly how you handle them at work. And that has been, like, my eyes were falling out of my head while I was interviewing him, because it just suddenly made so much sense. Just a few people, I think everyone's got a few people in their life that have either caused them a huge amount of heartache, or they've just been a really confusing time when they've worked with them or worked for them. And you usually come away from an encounter with a psychopath really bruised and really confused and often really upset. And I would say that's absolutely true for the several psychopaths I've either worked for or worked with or even employed during my working life. And we had one woman who called us on the podcast phone, and she said, I'm just listening to your interview with David Gillespie and I've had to pull over my car. My mother's a psychopath and I've been in therapy for 20 years, but I never knew why and I never had a word for it, and that's now I know. So that was one of those incredibly helpful, enlightening conversations that I've had. So I love No Filter. I love interviewing people.
Oh yeah, so do I. You get it.
Yeah, right.
Wow, 3 very different interviews though.
Very different. Sex worker Samuel Johnson and the psychopath analyst. It's really funny.
Well, it's good at the top of your head. You're like, okay, I got this. Favorite interviews? I already know. If someone asked me that, I'm like, I've interviewed a lot of people and they're all so good.
Usually the more famous someone is, the less enjoyable the interview is, because they've either got less time or they've done it 1,000 times and they're going to give you really stock answers. So, and of course the other one who I just adored was Elizabeth Gilbert, who was just, the author of Eat, Pray, Love and another book called Big Magic. And I got to interview her a couple of times, once on the phone and once in person, and she agreed to write the cover quote for my book, Work, Strife, Balance, which was just a dream come true for me. So she's one of those, unusual famous people that you meet, and she exceeds your expectations in every way. Sometimes it can be dangerous to meet your idols, and I've certainly experienced that in the past, but Elizabeth was just phenomenal.
Oh, wow. And I was just going to bring up about the book as well. Everyone should go check it out. It's out now. But I was wondering, how long did it take you to write this book? Was it in the pipeline for a while?
Oh, 45 years. No, well, in some ways that's true, because it is an accumulation of so much of what I've learned, particularly in my 20s, 30s, 40s. And it's the book that I wish I could have read during those times, which can be really confusing. And even in this age of the internet, where there's so much information at our fingertips, there are a lot of things that people don't want to write about and don't want to say publicly. And so I wanted to sort of cover a lot of that ground. I've been writing it in my head for a good few years before I actually wrote it, a good couple of years at least. I put it off for a year when my son was doing his final year of school, because I wanted to, writing a book is so all-consuming, and I wanted to be available for him. So when I actually sat down to write it, I don't know, if I could have just given up my full-time job running Mamma Mia and hosting the podcasts and all of that and looking after 3 children, I probably could have written it in a much shorter space of time than I did. But I had to sort of shoehorn it in and around everything else I was doing. So, it took a good 3 to 6 months where I was just pretty unavailable to my family, to work. It's hard work, and very lonely writing a book. Really lonely. But in other ways, in many ways, I just loved it, because when you write on the internet, everything is so fast and a book is so slow, and you've got so much more space. I mean, I wrote 140,000 words, which got edited down to about 110 or 115. And it was lovely just having that space to explore things.
And this is your 4th book you've written as well. So has it somewhat become a little easier for you, or still really hard?
Technically it's my 4th, but only 2 of them I wrote from scratch. 2 of them were sort of collections of other things that I'd written before. So no, it's not any easier at all. It's never any easier. I would love to say it's easier, but it's not.
And this book does include a very sweet chapter written by your son as well, and you just gave him free rein to write whatever he wanted. How was that experience for you? You learned some new things, didn't you? And knowing how he really thinks.
Yeah, it was confronting in many ways. I thought, gosh, I can write about parenting until the cows come home, but I'm interested to know now that he's old enough. He was about 18 when he wrote it. He's nearly 20 now. And I thought, oh, I'm interested in his point of view. I mean, really, it doesn't matter what sort of parent I thought I was. The proof of the pudding is in your kids and how they feel. And some of the things he wrote were just beautiful. Like how some are also upsetting, like how he feels when I get attacked in the media. That was really upsetting, because I suspected that it affected him badly, but I didn't know quite how badly. And then also just some of how I guess I've breached his trust, the mistakes that I've made, things that I thought were really not a big deal in hindsight, but to him were a really big deal. But also really proud of the man he is, and his attitude to women, and how much of a feminist he is. And, one of the things that wasn't in the book, because it hadn't happened yet, but that's happened kind of this year, is watching him fall in love. And watching your child fall in love is a beautiful thing. Like, parenting continues to surprise me. Just when you think you've read it all, you know it all, I've got 3 kids now and I've been doing it for 20 years, but watching him fall in love has just been so magical. And I must write about that with his permission one day.
Yeah, that pure happiness on his face, it lights you up, obviously. One of the things he did write was, "She is a walking hurricane of emotions and chaos. I did feel not insecure, but like I had to fend for myself." Did that break your heart a little?
I knew that. That part I knew. I mean, we've always had quite a reversal of roles, a bit like if you watch Dab Fab, Adina and Safi, her daughter, who's the straight-laced one, and Adina's like the crazy, well, she's always drunk. I'm not drunk, but I'm pretty crazy. So, yeah, he's always been more mature than me pretty much since he was born. So we have always had that role reversal. And, it's interesting how your relationship with your child sort of changes as they go from being a kid to being a young adult. And yeah, it's so far I'm really enjoying it. It's different, but he's a good friend. He's a really good friend.
Oh, that's a beautiful relationship to have with your kids.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. And I've got to say, this book is definitely for those women who feel like they are bad mothers or, can't do it all or even just living life wrong. You've definitely proven in your life, though, that you can do it all. It's all possible. So we were wondering, how do you balance it all? Are there some things that you've learned along the way or even tips that you can give the listeners?
Absolutely. So I called it work-life balance because I think that this idea of work-life balance is frankly, bullshit, because I think that I don't think no one I know has balance. I certainly don't. It's not that it's not a bad thing to strive for, but just because you don't have it at any moment in time or at most moments in time, that doesn't mean you're doing life wrong or that you're somehow failing or that you're not enough. So I suppose the tip that I would give people is lower your expectations. Don't think that you're going to have balance. Don't think that there's this magical formula that you'll go, oh, I get it. It's all fine. Like, life is a scramble. Life is a constant juggling act of not even juggling, but like doing triage. I don't know if you watch any of those hospital shows like Grey's Anatomy, but most of the time that say there's been some, bus crash or whatever, and 100 people come into the ER and the doctors have to try to work out, okay, who is the most critical and who needs attention the most. And that's what most women are doing every day, not just women with kids, but we're all busy. People have their own podcasts and they're doing that as a side hustle while they're working in a shop, and they're, helping out their parents and they're helping out their friends and they're volunteering at a animal shelter and all of the things that we have to do. And we're always trying to work out, okay, what's the most important thing right now? And this idea, I think, is a really big myth that you have to choose, that you have to make a choice between work and family, is just bollocks. Or, I mean, you don't. You do, but you make 100 choices a day, and then tomorrow you'll make 100 more choices. So, I guess I reject the idea of having it all, because firstly, that implies greed, and no one ever says that about men. And secondly, it's just life. You want to have kids. Most people don't get the choice of whether they work or not. Most of us have to work. Because we've got to put food on the table. So I think that it's about being kinder to ourselves. To me, that's the most important thing. You can't change the fact that your children will need you, that your work will need you, that your parents will need you as they get older, that your friends will need you. But you can change how you feel about the job you're doing at balancing and juggling all those needs. And I think that if there's one message I have, is just be kinder to yourself and lower your expectations for what you can do.
Wow, I love that. You've even made me rethink some things.
Good, good. I hope so.
Yeah. And I have realised it's not just work and home life for you, because as you mentioned before, your husband works with you. So do you find that's kind of strengthened your relationship a bit, or sometimes you're like, oh, just get away from me, I have too much of you?
Yeah, well, both. And our son works for us as well. He's a podcast producer here at Mamma Mia, and sometimes he produces one of my podcasts as well. So it's all very enmeshed. Look, I think that running your own business, as anyone who's done that knows, is so all-consuming that if you're doing it and your partner is doing something that's equally consuming but different, that's almost more of a pressure. At least, as annoying as it can be sometimes to work together, we've got each other's backs and we're both pulling in the same direction for our family and for our business. So that is a huge help, in that we're both doing the same thing and striving towards the same goal. And yeah, we try to have boundaries. We're working physically closer than we ever have before, actually. We're now sitting on the same shared desk in the office, whereas we've always tried to sit at the opposite ends of the office. But we do still drive into work and drive home separately. That's really key for me, to just have a bit of space. And we try to have boundaries at home, but we usually don't manage it. It's not usually possible.
There you go. That's interesting to hear about. And even though you've already achieved so much in your career, Mia, what else can we expect from you in the future?
Oh, I don't know. I've never been a planner. I've never been a 1 year, 5 year, even 5 minute planner. At the moment, what I'm trying to do is write some things on a post-it note that I need to achieve each day and put on my computer. Otherwise, I kind of careen minute to minute. Um, so I really don't know. I'm loving podcasting. I'm loving writing again. I've started my column back on Mamma Mia on Sundays, which I'm really, really enjoying writing. So, you know, if anything, I'm more involved in the editorial mix of the company than I have been for a long time. And that's where I'm happiest, when I'm sort of on the tools and in the weeds and working with the writers and working with the producers. Yeah, that's what I love.
That's good to hear. So we'll just keep a lookout. Whatever you just decide to do randomly, we'll support you.
Thank you. And I'm also passionate about, there are 3 charities that I'm an ambassador for or a patron of. One is Share the Dignity, which is a phenomenal charity that was started after we did an article on Mamma Mia about how homeless women can't afford sanitary products, and sometimes they have to, choose between feeding themselves and buying a packet of tampons. So a woman called Rochelle Courtney started this charity called Share the Dignity, and I'm a proud patron for them. And also another charity called Rise Up, who are actually out of Queensland, but they're national. And what they do is that they help furnish emergency accommodation for women who are escaping domestic violence, women and children, because one of the big reasons that women often will go back to an abusive partner is because the emergency accommodation that they get is just so awful, because there's such high demand for it. And so what Rise Up try to do is that they call, if you like them on Facebook, they send out calls and they say, we need a toaster, or we need a kettle. And they say, can you go out to Kmart and can you just buy a kettle and can you buy a toaster? And it seems like not much, but these are the things that make a huge difference when someone is trying to decide whether they're going to stick it out and try to escape from an abusive relationship, or whether they're just going to go back because it's easier. And then Sydney Dogs and Cats Home, which is where both of our dogs came from. It's a fantastic animal shelter, and I'm very passionate about rescue animals and adopt, don't shop.
I'm so glad that you support great charities like that. And there's a couple there I've never heard of, so I'm going to go check that out myself.
Yeah, follow them on Facebook. They're terrific.
Definitely. And Mia, we also wanted to know, what advice would you give to the listeners who might want to follow their dreams of becoming an editor, journalist, blogger, or an author like yourself?
What I would suggest, 2 things. On my Instagram account, I have a sort of a project that I'm doing called Lady Startup, particularly for women, obviously, where I showcase different women who are starting their own businesses. And what I would say, because a lot of they've never been more startups and more businesses started by women, and a lot of women do it because they want more flexible hours. Don't ever think that you will work less hours. If you work for yourself, you will work 10 times as many hours as you are working now, but they will be your crazy hours. You will be able to dictate them. So I've worked 18-hour days for the last maybe 15 or 16 days, because things are really, really hectic and busy at the moment at work, and lots of people are sick and there's just a lot to be done. But what I would suggest is that if you want to start your own thing, start it as a side hustle. I started Mamma Mia ostensibly as a side hustle. I had a newspaper column. I had a newspaper column. I had a couple of other things that I was earning money from, much less than when I was a media executive, but I was still had some other source of income. Elizabeth Gilbert said to me, it makes her very nervous when women come up and say, I'm going to give up my job as a paralegal and I'm going to just write a novel. And she's like, don't do that. She's like, write the novel, but keep your job as a paralegal, because your passion or your dream is not necessarily going to pay the bills. It doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue it, but sometimes a side hustle turns into something that can make you money, like yours has and mine has, and sometimes it won't. That doesn't mean it's not worth trying, but don't chuck all your eggs in that basket. I'm very big on the side hustle.
That's good advice. Thank you very much. Hopefully people take it on board.
Pleasure.
And we are getting to the end of the interview, unfortunately. It's been a lot of fun and great learning new things about you. But as a closing statement, and was probably the most important question, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your 14-year-old self?
Probably slow down and build foundations. You know, I write about that in the book, about how it's probably a very unsexy word, building foundations. But whether it's your relationship or your friendship or your career, do the work. Do the work. Don't rush, because anything that happens really quickly will probably fall apart really quickly. And I've experienced that in relationships. I experienced that in marriage. I've experienced that in business. So the importance of foundations, people sort of say Mamma Mia is an overnight success, but we've been doing it for 10 years this year. It was not an overnight success by any stretch. 10 years is a very long night. And I think that's why we're pretty solid today. And I would say the best friendships have solid foundations, and the best relationships in every aspect of your life do. So yeah, foundation's very important.
I love that. No one's ever said that before for that question, so thank you. And before we go, if the listeners would like to contact you or find out what you're up to, where should they go?
The best thing is to find me on Facebook. I am also on Instagram. That is where I'm most active. But they can also go to my website, which is just miafreedman.com, and there are pointers there to everything that you might need.
Perfect. Easy enough to find you. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Mia. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, and good luck with everything that you're doing.
Thank you, and we'd love to have you on again in the future. Hopefully next time we can do it in person.
Thanks, Lauren. Good to meet you.
No problem. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Well, I hope you'll enjoy today's interview, and if you'd like to check out any of our other interviews, visit our website, raveituptv.com. But for now, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye!